Modern Pleasure answers the questions about sex that you've always wanted to ask but didn't.
Join me, Kim K, and our resident sexpert, Dr. Jenny Schuyler, as we dive deep into combos ranging from sexual intimacy and pleasure to eye-opening sexual revelations. And just like that, it's our last episode of the season. It seems like it flew by, and super excited to have Savannah back with us to talk about orgasms. And why wouldn't we talk about orgasms during the last episode of this season of Modern Podcast? I'm excited.
I'm excited. Orgasms are great.
I'm very excited.
We're going to get into that discussion really quick, but want to remind you that you should definitely go to adamandeve.com and get your orgasm on by getting 50% off almost any one item. Use code word modern at checkout and get those 10 free fun gifts and free shipping. And that's something to get excited about, I would think. So make sure you do that because you are such a devoted listener to Modern Pleasure and we love it. I'm just excited about all the people that have approached me and said, oh, I got my Adam and Eve package. I got my 50% off and it was so fun. And I was never so excited to buy something from an adult toy store in my life. So yay. I love hearing that stuff. So, get excited, have some fun, go to adamandeve.com, get that 50% off by using code word modern and that free shipping and those fun free gifts as well. So, before we dive into this episode, I always like to do a little recap. And I think the last time that Jenny and I talked, we were talking about, I think it was, one of the episodes was lazy sex, which was great because that was really very informative and helpful, by the way. And then we also talked about single sex, and I've had a couple people approach me on that and thought it was really interesting. And also what I'm getting is I want more answers to questions. I want solutions, so I think that we are going to dive in a little bit deeper and perhaps provide you with some extra material. We're kind of working on that. So if you have a question, if you want to dive in a little deeper, email me at modernpleasurepodcast@gmail.com. Let me know what it is that you'd like to talk about, what solutions you'd like to hear from Dr. Jenny, and we'll see if we can't make this happen. So again, that's modernpleasurepodcast@gmail.com. So, and one more thing I wanted to mention, and Dr. Jenny, you're going to be so proud of me.
Oh, good. Tell me.
Oh, you're just going to be, this is just the perfect, just wrap around from our season, our episode 1 discussion. So my husband and I celebrated our 19th wedding anniversary.
Congrats.
I know. We had so much fun. We had dinner plans. And of course, Savannah, I don't know if you know this, but we ordered that first product review that you did with the cock ring that had the little rabbit ears on it.
Yes.
So my husband ordered that. And we've had it sitting next to the, on the nightstand in the little package. Well, he's got a little container for it. Had it sitting there for weeks because nobody had the bandwidth or time to deal with it. And then Dr. Jenny suggested, have sex before you go out to dinner.
Yes.
And yeah. And so I told George that. I said, so here's the suggestion. Let's plan it. As soon as I get off work, we're gonna have an hour and a half of just us, and whatever that looks like, whatever you want to do. And he was so happy. He goes, that's a great idea. So I'm here to tell you that we did use our little toy.
And
it was fucking fantastic.
Oh, Kim, that's so good.
We had more fun. He was just like, "Whoa." I was like, "Oh, give me more." And I had one of the best orgasms I've ever had. And it was absolutely amazing. And we had so much fun at dinner. There was no pressure to have sex after our dinner date because, of course, we're full. We've been, had some drinks, had a really nice dinner. And it was nice to just go home and kind of revel in all of it. And George is still hopping around extremely happy, 3 days later. So, great advice. Anyone who, wants to heed that advice, you're welcome. Thanks to Dr. Jenny. And just, it, and here's the other thing. George made a comment, and I had somebody in my family make a comment just recently, I think just a couple days ago. And it was my aunt. My aunt Michelle is just one of the most soulful, inspirational, knowledgeable, intuitive persons on this planet. She really is. And she kind of pulled me aside. We were at dinner and she said, "Hey, I just want to tell you how proud I am of you and what a difference I hear in your voice in terms of your confidence since episode 1 and moving into, these later episodes." And she goes, "I just really feel like it's not about the sex. It's not about what you've been through or how vulnerable you're being. What I hear is that you really do care. You really do care about anybody who's listening that may benefit from this information and this knowledge." She goes, "It's really beautiful." And so thank you for that, Auntie M. And it's, hands off to you, or hats off, not hands off. I don't know why, I don't know why I said hands off. Hats off to you, Dr. Jenny, for being this, uh, person who has helped, not only me, but I know a lot of people that are listening to really discover something outside of what maybe, they were telling themselves before. And I love it. I just love this whole evolution. So, yay. Congratulations.
My pleasure. Kim, tell me something about your toy and your orgasm. Did you guys have foreplay? I imagine that it wasn't just the toy that provided the orgasm, but the ability to communicate, the ability to even just say, "Let's have sex before dinner." Um, the playfulness and the ease is my guess were some of the key ingredients that led to such a pleasurable time.
Absolutely. I mean, it's almost like, that notebook that I've been keeping in my conscience here, as far as, all the things that I've learned. We just checked all those boxes. It was, the anticipation of it and knowing that this was going to happen and being, really um deliberate in, making sure that it happened and not in a pressure way, but just in a way that was like exciting. It's like opening up a new toy for Christmas. That was kind of fun, just like, okay, this is going to be something new and exciting. But more than that, I think it was that I allowed myself to really just lean into it and not feel, I'm pretty sensitive, I get stimulated easy and sometimes not in a good way because I'm really, really sensitive. And my skin is sensitive. My nipples are sensitive. I mean, just that's just me. So sometimes that foreplay is a little bit hard to get into because I feel like a rigid woman in bed sometimes. And so the fact that I felt really relaxed. Oh, well, it started with a massage. Good
Good.
job, George.
Good
He
George.
Yeah, he had the bed all nice. There was this nice furry blanket, that was super comfy, and it would have been extremely relaxing had the dogs not continued to try to jump up on the bed and be a part of it. So we had to make sure that they were somewhere else and not barking incessantly. But, So it started with a massage. He massaged my feet, which he knows I love, and then just worked up all around my body to the point where that bed height came into play.
Oh.
That's all I'm gonna say. And, because he was standing, in front of the bed. And before I knew it, there were some other things going on, and, there was a lot of foreplay, to be honest. It was great. And then it was like, "Okay, let's, strap it on, honey. Let's see what this is like."
So, Kim, there's a really important moment here. I hear your dogs. There they are again.
Those aren't my dogs.
Oh, Savannah's dogs. That's okay. Not all of you have the privilege of having an area rug dog like that one.
Yeah.
But the important component that I really heard in that whole narrative of how you and George got into such a playful, fun time, one, obviously he knew that this was a sex date, so he set up the space and the ambiance as such, which is important, right? He attuned to that. And then he massaged you, which is key because it settled your nervous system, I imagine, right? We can't just go, redlining life and being in a stress mode or doing work and being productive into like, now I can have sex, right? There needs to be a transition. And the transition is relaxing into our parasympathetic nervous system, but not so much that you're going to fall asleep. So what I'm hearing that he did is he massaged you and then sort of titrated back into the sensual massage. And the massage, relax, sensual. And that titration is an art form that I think is key for givers to learn, whatever gender you are, because then we get to really relax and we get to feel turned on, and it really builds our system towards arousal in a very fluid way.
It definitely was. And I think, he unknowingly, was doing that, I'm sure, because he was really surprised at my, you know, um uh, 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 my initiation to oral sex while he was massaging me. And he was like, "Whoa." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I mean, it's right there."
Great.
And so that just turned it into a whole other playful game, and it was so fun. And I'm so happy that, we, because sometimes what happens is you plan for these things like special moments or dates or, like in this case, anniversary. And, you go have that dinner and it's really nice, but it never ends up well because it's quick sex. It's kind of throwaway sex because you feel like you have to have it. And then, nobody's feeling, that desire or, arousal or that connection that they really want to feel. And so by doing this, kind of turning things a little bit backwards and not in that, sense of, it has to go in this order, it really did make a huge difference. And so that's gonna be so he and I were both like, okay, from now on, it's sex before dinner. and and I'm like all over it. I'm like, perfect. I love that idea. It's perfect. Make the
Perfect.
time and make it happen because it worked.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Happy
And
to
I
hear-
can't wait to do it again.
Good. Listen to this. That's so
I
great.
know, isn't it great?
That's so
I
great.
So anyway, so that's my story. I am the perfect example of how this can definitely work and especially, in my, age group where that isn't always something that happens. I mean, gosh, I felt like I was 20 years younger,
It's great.
when we were having sex right when we met.
Yeah.
We haven't had that experience in a long time, so it was great.
Yeah, Kim, I mean, you say your age group, and just for listeners to remind people of your age group, right? 60? Are you 60?
I am.
That's great. No, own it. That's beautiful. And what's important about that number is that you're, well past menopause and you're not depending on hormones, unless you're taking,
No,
HRT. Um,
no.
And some women do, and that's great, and some women don't, and that's great, right? But you can't depend on hormones for your sex drive. So it
No.
really illuminates the importance of the relationship, and it really illuminates the importance of our brain as our biggest sex organ and how to turn that on and how to eliminate those things that turn us off, right? A full belly turns us off. Late night turns us off, right? So what turns us on? Oh, I already took my shower before I get dressed for my date. Here's a furry blanket and my husband willing to give me oral sex and a massage. Like, yes, sign me up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and for obviously the topic today is orgasms, but I imagine that it wasn't just the toy, that really helped in that department. I think it was the whole thing, that really lent itself to having a really great orgasm and just feeling like, whoa, okay, I hit the ceiling. And it was, and I think it was a combination of all these things.
Yeah, that's great. That's super
Yeah.
great. Which is a great segue into orgasms.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Or do you have any other updates?
No, I think that's pretty much it for now. I
Okay.
mean, as far as I'm concerned, I feel like I talk way too much about me on this podcast. I'm so ready for somebody else to do the talking.
Well, we've got Savannah here too, but no, it's
We do.
great because, um, in a way, you're a little bit of the guinea pig doing the evolution over time,
Yeah, that's true.
and you therefore give other people the permission to do an evolution over time, and you inspire them and motivate them because you can do it. So I think it's great.
Yeah, and it paid off.
Adam and Eve is not giving you 10% off and not 20% off or even 40%. Your discount is even bigger. AdamandEve.com is giving you a whopping 50% off. But why stop there? Use offer code
Modern.
and you'll also get 10 free gifts, like a sexy item for him, a special toy for her, and something you'll both enjoy, plus 6 free spicy movies and free shipping. So go to AdamandEve.com now for 50% off and more.
Yeah. How do we want to jump into this one?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if maybe we should start with Savannah, since Savannah probably, might be more of an expert on orgasms than I would be. It's been a while since I've had different forms of orgasm. I don't know if they are. I mean, there's multiple, there's all these things. Maybe we start off with that. What are the different forms of orgasm? I mean, I would imagine, the only ones that I know of are, multiple and just orgasm.
I don't know if I know all of the different categories of orgasms. I do know like clitoral stimulation. I know like internal stimulation. Those are the only two I've experienced.
Yeah,
And multiple.
let's define this because I have no
Yeah.
idea, that are there different parts of the vulva that orgasm, or is there just one?
Let's back up. I think
Okay.
it's important to define what an orgasm is. So,
Yeah.
we traditionally understand this as the rhythmic contraction of the genitals. And in that rhythmic, it's a very sort of fast rhythmic contraction between our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous system going in terms of having that contraction, if we're going to be clinical about it. So it's sort of the climax of pleasure for most people after buildup of arousal. Now, that's if you have genital sensation. I do have clients in wheelchairs and they do not have sensation in their genitals. So orgasm can also be defined, and I like to define it this way, as surrender. And we
Hmm.
can't actually have an orgasm unless we surrender to ourselves and trust in our body and to the person we're surrendering with. And when we talk about the elusive orgasm, right, people who struggle with anorgasmia, which is the struggle to orgasm, primary with yourself, secondary with a partner, it's really about that concept of surrender and the opposite, which is control. So we can get into that later, but I like to really think about the body as surrendering into the utmost point of pleasure. So usually that is the genitals, but if you are a wheelchair user or you don't have sensation in your genitals for some reason, I've had clients have orgasms in their neck, in their ear. Many women have orgasms in their nipples, even if they do have genital sensation. Sometimes they have it in their nipples anyway, or both, or either. And it's just illuminates that orgasm is that peak climatic experience of utmost pleasure at a pinpoint in your body. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a new one for me. So you're talking about the same type of benefit in terms of how that feels. I mean, there's that blissful, organic kind of out of body experience that can happen in the ear or the neck.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. If you ask people in wheelchairs, I had one woman, I remember this vividly. I was in grad school in a human sexuality class, and goodness, I wish I could give her credit by remembering her name, so I'm so sorry. So if you're listening, call me out. But she said she had a mindgasm. And it was really this moment with her partner that was so intense and so poignant that it felt like her mind was like buzzing, like electric. And it was her orgasm. It was a mindgasm. And she was a wheelchair user. And that's
Wow.
he had her orgasm.
So do you think that because they don't have that sensation in their genitals that it carries into a different part of the body more easily than anybody else that, would feel the sensation in their genitals?
Yeah. So the body retrains itself, right? And you can retrain yourself to probably have an orgasm in a different part of the body. When you have genital sensation, it's probably a harder task to do that. But in the absence of it, our nerve endings will wire to other places to have this experience.
How interesting. Had no idea. Savannah, did you know that?
I did. Also, I wanted to just jump in and say for you, Kim, the experience of having a massage might be the closest to non-genital like surrender. Just like the relaxation, the bliss, the full body, everything outside of the genital stimulation. I
Yeah.
experienced that. I have
Yeah.
a hard time orgasming unless I'm very relaxed. I need a lot of mental stimulation beforehand, before I get involved. And then massages are always super great just to put my body in a state of relaxation and be able to fully release. Then is when I'm able to allow my partner to even touch me sexually.
Mhm. Yeah, that's for sure. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Which is true for so many of us women. And that's usually because most of us have some history of some violation at some point.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right? I don't really know a woman who hasn't had like an unscathed past in any way, even if it's just, even if the T trauma is a little T that's just an emotional moment or a sexually harassed moment, all the way up to major violations. I don't think we can kind of get through this planet without that. And
Yeah.
therefore, the body does guard and block. And so it does need the safety and trust to surrender. And yeah, I totally echo you, Savannah. The time feeling the sense of massage, to surrender into the giver, to surrender into the mattress, to allow yourself to open to the possibility of pleasure and the utmost pleasure, which is orgasm, does take time and trust. Those are the two key T's in terms of orgasmic success. I'm really careful about saying the word success because it's not a moment of success, really. It's just a moment of orgasm. Uh, I if we go all the way back to episode 1, I don't want to make orgasm the point of it, even
Hmm.
though we are goal-oriented in nature to want to have an orgasm. But if we put pleasure as the point and let orgasm happen as a byproduct, I think we're in better shape than chasing the orgasm, right? Then we're sort of, goal oriented and hungry for that and more performative, and we need it versus like I surrender to the pleasure and the orgasm happens.
Well, and I remember you saying one time when, we were talking about men being responsible, or saying, I'm responsible for her orgasm. And you're like, no, you're responsible for your own orgasm.
Yeah.
It's not on him. And I've also felt like there's there's women that I know that, I mean, some of them haven't had orgasms in years and they have a partner, and it's just not part of the deal, because it takes them so long to get there. So that makes a lot of sense. If you're not willing to really surrender and allow yourself to feel that pleasure and to be a part of it. George said something to me during this moment that we had, and oh gosh, I just had it in my head and now I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was along the lines of he kind of that same feeling of surrender, that he really felt me giving in. Yeah. And more so than he ever has. And so it definitely is a mental thing, at first, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you have to just let go of all the things ruminating through your head, or, even maybe put something in your head that's a little bit more exciting too, and I've done that.
It's absolutely a head game. I mean, and Savannah, you could probably speak to this as well, and maybe it's TMI, but there's times when I can have multiple orgasms and times where I can't orgasm at all. And
Absolutely.
it's where my mind is, right?
Yeah.
My gosh, it's late. I really want to get my sleep because I know my kids are going to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and it's already whatever it is. My mind is not relaxed and in the game.
Yeah.
Because, I'm off at a hotel room and my kids are in a different city or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And that's so true. Like I mentioned in one of our other episodes, sometimes when we are in a hotel, we have the best sex, or when we're not home, because you're not thinking about all the things that you need to do,
Yeah.
in the home. And we don't have kids at home right now, but it still happens.
Totally.
There's just all of these other distractions.
Yeah. What did
Um,
you say, Savannah?
Yeah, I was gonna say that my most powerful orgasms and the times that I've had multiple has been the times where I'm not focused on finishing at all. I will think that I'm not going to, and so I just kind of lose the sight of that and focus more on just enjoying the moment. I want to describe it probably as animalistic, like primal, fully losing yourself, and then suddenly you're there, and then you're there, and then you're there, and then you're there.
Mhm.
that's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
To
Yeah.
stop focusing on it. Because as soon as you focus on it, and I think men probably experience this as well, as soon as you focus on it, you can lose it because there's so much pressure. And then, like, I want to say energetically, you're just tightening everything back up and creating restrictions on your body as soon as you set an expectation.
Yeah.
And what about on the other side for men? They're going back to that conversation of them feeling responsible for, their partner's orgasm. w- what kind of pressure does that put not only on the partner, but on them as well? And feeling like if you don't have an orgasm, we're not having great sex.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the biggest secrets in our country right now, I think, is young men, college-age men, men in their 20s having delayed ejaculation. That's the clinical term, even though ejaculation and orgasm are actually separate events. But for most men, it happens at the same time. Delayed ejaculation they don't orgasm with partner. I've had men over the years, it's pretty rare, where they don't orgasm by themselves either. Masturbation just doesn't quite work, or it's tricky to touch themselves because there's some other traumas. But the more common one is inability to orgasm with partner. And that's usually a blend of a lot of different things, but it happens. It totally happens. So anorgasmia can happen to anyone, men or women, or whatever gender identity you have.
And it's mostly psychological, not necessarily I mean, obviously there's probably some physical reasons as well, but would you say for the most part, it's a psychological issue?
For the most part, once in a blue moon, there is a physiological issue, right? There's an injury to the pelvic floor. Like I have some hardcore bicyclists. And yeah, so once in a blue moon, it can be a physiological thing. Savannah, you have someone where it's a physiological thing? You know someone?
I actually went through it myself. when I was towards the tail end of my last relationship, which I've spoken about before, it was a very sexually, I want to like abusive relationship. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't good for my body. I towards the end of it started having physical pain every time I would have sex. It felt like inside of my vagina there was a cut or a tear. It was a super intense, just searing pain, like you put lemon juice in a cut. And I
Mm.
went to the gyno. I went to like a couple of different doctors. You know, they opened me up with the speculum in, couldn't find any physical issues. It wasn't swelling and nerve damage. It was my body telling me that this was not safe.
Yep.
And that it wasn't something that I should be doing. And every time I tried, it hurt the same. As soon as we broke up, my very first just hookup at a bar partner, I was nervous. I was like, hey, just so you know, this is a thing, completely gone, totally gone. And I haven't had that feeling since.
Adam and Eve is not giving you 10% off and not 20% off or even 40%. Your discount is even bigger. AdamandEve.com is giving you a whopping 50% off. But why stop there? Use offer code MODERN and you'll also get 10 free gifts, like a sexy item for him, a special toy for her, and something you'll both enjoy, plus 6 free spicy movies and free shipping. So go to AdamandEve.com now for 50% off and more.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
that
the
is
brilliance of the body in terms of feeling safe, right? The body, that's and I feel like our genitals, and this is true for men and women, are like radar detectors, right? They're the antennae of our body, right? The antennae of our body to say, person safe, person not safe, situation not safe. High
Right.
anxiety.
I felt like my body was like, okay, you're not listening to the fact that you're like the fact that you don't feel safe, your anxiety is not doing it enough. Let me give you like a blaring red sign, like right here. It's very hard to ignore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is so interesting. I never really thought about it like that, but if I'm looking back at some of the relationships that I've had that were really not good and somewhat abusive, I can remember feeling like it was super, super painful for whatever reason. And but then it wouldn't be, as I moved on. I never really considered that it was a psychological thing in terms of that physical pain, but that makes sense. Why
Yeah.
do you think our genitals are, so in tune to that?
It's the most vulnerable part of our body. I mean, sex is the most vulnerable place where we open up and let someone in or enter someone, right? It is the most like possibly sacred activity you can do with another human, even though it's sort of been socially diluted that way. You can definitely see it that way. If you think about our body, like, there's a reason that we walk around with clothes, right? I know that's a social construct to walk around with clothes. And obviously there's weather indicators, but even in the like hottest environments, our genitals are usually covered. And even in most cultures, even if the women are topless, the genitals are still usually covered. So there's sort of a covering and a sacredness to those, because I think there's a high level of vulnerability, which again, that vulnerable area is going to say, whoop, safe or not safe, right? Now, our mind can override it, especially with alcohol or other drugs, right? That's why hookup culture with said drug is very popular, because you override the body's intuition. But generally, in a sober state, our body is going to tell us, if we pay attention to our body, it's going to tell us safe or not safe.
Yeah. Interesting. So interesting. Well, I want to maybe transition this into the fun part of orgasm and the other types of orgasm. So just want to remind you to head over to adamandeve.com. They've got all kinds of fun products and stuff to enhance your orgasm. Anybody have any suggestions? No.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun oral simulation toys on there, including the pink breathless one.
Okay.
And like I've talked about in previous episodes, different types of lube that have simulation is often very fun. Yeah,
Oh, look
Dr.
at
Jenny has
Dr. Jenny has it. Of course she has it right there on hand. Breathless. Oh, I like that one. Anyway, all you have to do is go to adamandeve.com and enter code word modern and get 50% off almost any one item plus 10 free gifts and free shipping. So thank you for being a devoted listener. And that code is only for our Modern Pleasure Podcast listeners, nobody else. So go ahead, get on there, adamandeve.com, find something fun and something to, get your juices flowing, as they say. Use code word modern. And we're going to now kind of dive into, we've sort of talked clinically about orgasms, but how do you, so I don't I mean, I know that I have experienced multiple orgasms, probably, a handful of times. How is that? Is there like a trick to this? Because I know that I've talked to women who are like, how does that happen? How do you make it happen? Is there a way that you can, really sort of drive this car and control these orgasms? And I've heard that you can. I have no idea how that happens, though.
You absolutely can. This is so exciting for me. I love it so much. Mostly what I do is breath work. So going back to being fully relaxed. And secondly is not getting overstimulated. I have a very sensitive clit. And so if I come the first time from like rubbing, like friction, it's hard to get back in that space because it's so sensitive. I'm like, oh my God, don't touch me.
Yeah.
So
It's
I would say
usually
go
where I
soft.
go.
Right. Soft and slow, really focus for cis sex on like internal penetration and like feeling just like be a little bit more exploratory and feel inside of you what points feel super good on top of like external stimulation. And that's how I always pretty consistently. I mean, pretty consistently.
Wow, lucky you.
I have a good partner too, though. So, he
That
does his
helps.
fair share of the work.
Kim, I think I think a few other ingredients to consider is your mind game, right? So if your mind game is one and done, and I'm like, okay, I'm done, which is totally fine, by the way. Most people are one and done. Then the body kind of reads that message as, okay, I'm done. Versus there's more in there. And I find, orgasm is also an energy. And so if it's been a long time, sometimes you can create a buildup and have multiples. And, women don't have a refractory period the way men do. So we can keep going based on what kind of based on which kind of stimulation we need. And every woman is different, right? So what you're saying, Savannah, is, that slow and steady and subtle sensation to
Yeah.
kind of keep that flow going. I have other women where they use like a Hitachi wand and, they'll have a very big, powerful orgasm, pull the wand away, take some deep breaths, right? Put the wand somewhere else on their thighs for a few moments, somewhere else, and then come back to their vulva, come back to maybe their labia, and then come back into the clitoris, and then have another orgasm. And I think the trick that to really consider really is building up, having some space for the clitoris between orgasms.
Yeah, absolutely. After my first time, I'll usually focus more on my partner before we go back to focusing on me.
So it doesn't mean that you're having orgasm after orgasm after orgasm in terms of, one right after the other, like, stop, start, stop, start. It could
Right.
be, within the actual sexual activity that you're having.
Right. And sometimes they can be very prolonged as well.
Mm.
It could be both, Kim, right? Stylistically, what you're describing, Savannah, is definitely multiples, but it's spaced out between like different activities, and other people have multiple sort of back to back to back. So I think every woman is different, and we're built differently, right? Our nerve endings in our vulva are all different. It's not, my vulva is not going to be your vulva, and it's not going to be Savannah's vulva, right? It's going to be however the nerve endings are packed in there, and and how they respond to different kinds of stimulation. And, also how we sort of trained them in a way.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense. So
Yeah. So for you, Kim, you're more sensitive. So you probably have similar issues to me where after you're stimulated, it's a little bit too much. But
yeah.
other women might not have that. Probably. I wish I didn't have
Yeah.
that.
Well, yeah,
So
I
I'm
know I
gonna
get to
keep
that
mine.
point where I'm like, okay, just back away,
Yeah,
Can't
like, don't touch me. Go away. Get out of here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's really interesting. So now Savannah brought up the um clit orgasm and uh something else. So there was
G-spot,
we talked
internal.
okay, so do those feel different to you? I mean, how can you tell one from the other? I mean, I would just think an orgasm is an orgasm, but is the sensation different?
For me, it's hard to describe. It just feels deeper.
Which
Like
one?
clitoral stimulation, internal does. Clitoral stimulation feels more, I want to use the word sharp, but it's not painful.
Okay, yeah.
Like
I
sharp
think I
and
know what
snappy
you're
in there.
yeah, I know that
And G-spot stimulation is much more, I feel it in all of my muscles and all the nerve endings in my pelvis. Like it's very, I also contract a lot more when it's
yeah.
a G-spot.
So I'm gonna raise my hand now. So I have had both. I just didn't know that there was a distinction.
Mhm.
Now I know. That's awesome. Good info.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there a way to get so okay, let me think here. So if I'm going to say that if I'm masturbating, I think I stimulate my clitoris more than I would the G spot. That's that if my memory serves in terms of how that feels as opposed to penetration and sex with my partner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. I think it's easier access. For me, it's less work,
Yeah.
especially with clitoral stimulating toys. You can just turn it off and on and you get it done. And, with my dildos and stuff, I have to go through and I have to warm myself up and I have to clean it after. And it's a whole thing, it's a whole process. So I think it's just an easier access to pleasure
Mhm.
for like clitoral stimulation. I always like dive that way as well.
The clitoris has no reproductive function, which is why it's designed for our pleasure, which is wonderful. And also what makes us human is being sexual beings and having like this little hot button of pleasure. Um, and I would say, I think the numbers, there's lots of research out here, but basically the numbers are, 75% of women cannot have an orgasm with internal stimulation alone.
Hmm.
That's a huge number. So a lot of women are like,
It
I
is.
have my G-spot orgasm without the clit involved. Join the masses. Most of us can't, right? That G-spot is sort of the back. If you think about the clitoris going into the pelvic floor, which is it does, it's sort of like these spider legs, like a V-shaped spider leg that goes
Mhm.
inside the vagina. It's called crura. Those are the legs of the clitoris. Those are the nerve endings that feed the G-spot, right? And so some women, yes, very few can have internal stimulation and orgasm without the clitoris involved. But I would say most women need at least the combo, and women most women just have clitoral stimulation, which is why like your cock ring with the ears is so great. But what happens is if you have the pressure on the G spot and the clitoral stimulation, you're given all the nerve endings down there the possibility of pleasure. So you're sort of building up the whole entourage of orgasmic possibility.
That's
Oh, yeah.
probably what I felt the other night. I'm surprised you haven't brought the vulva pillow out yet.
I was thinking about it. You want me to bring the vulva pillow out?
Yeah, we need to have I think the vulva pillow needs to make an appearance on our last episode for sure.
Right. So clitoral contact. By the way, you're sensitive, Kim, and a lot of women are. And so if you use a toy, I say put the toy on the outer labia and the inner labia and play that way. Don't just jump to the genitals. I give partners that advice too. You don't want to just jump to the genitals, right? You start with your feet and a foot massage. I think that's a key piece versus like jumping to the genitals. The clitoral hood is there to protect a very sensitive hot button. That's why it's there, right? And then once we do have that pleasure, again, the legs inside kind of go like that, but the G spot is the back side of the clitoris, right? Which is why
Gotcha.
having a finger inside for oral sex or 2 fingers inside while he's licking is great because, again, you're putting the pressure on the G spot while you're also having clitoral sensation. Or if you have penetration and clitoral stimulation, again, right, you're maxing out the possibility of pleasure from the inside and the outside.
That's amazing. So if you're listening and you're only getting the audible version, there is a video version on our Modern Pleasure Podcast YouTube channel. So, check that out. Because that pillow is amazing. I mean, it really does. I know that in our first episode, when you brought that pillow out, I was like, I had no idea. I mean, obviously, it's been a while since I had any kind of clinical diagram of my vagina or vulva now that we're referring to it as. And so, that was actually one of those eye-opening moments where I'm like, okay, this is really, really informative. And I wasn't the only one. Had a lot of people say that vulva pillow is something, that I never knew it was called the vulva. I always just thought it was called the vagina. So, just good lesson there.
Yeah.
Really good lesson. Which is why I think more men need to listen to this podcast. My aunt had, her husband listen to it, and, I was like, "Okay, that's great. I'm so happy he's listening," but at the same time, I'm like, "It's my uncle." And then, knowing I know. And then I was at a function, and a man that I highly respect that I'd worked with before, kind of came over and whispered in my ear and says, "I've been listening to your podcast." And I went, "Oh my gosh." Older gentleman, and I was like, I was mortified, but really honored all at the same time. And he says, "It's very good and it's very much needed." So, yeah, we're doing something right here. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
I also
Well,
think men just find it hot when women are
talking about sex. Well,
well,
I
not that. Talking about pleasure and taking control of their own pleasure. I feel like it lifts a lot of weight off of their shoulders, and just having the open communication is something a lot of couples don't have, in my
yeah.
experience.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, obviously, the whole idea of doing this podcast was to was a benefit for anybody who was not only curious, but maybe are suffering through the same things that I have or other women have. And so I know it's really helped. Dr. Jenny, any last thoughts about our topic today before we I kind of wanted to take some time to sort of go over some other things, but just wondering if there was anything you wanted to add to this orgasm episode.
Sure. I mean, just for a moment, some women squirt, right, as part of their orgasm. Some women don't.
Really?
Most women don't, probably.
I tried my hardest.
You try your hardest, right? I don't know. I have some colleagues who are like, I can get every woman to squirt. And I'm like, okay, because I've tried pretty hard.
I've dedicated multiple days.
Right? Dedicated. Right. So if you don't squirt, don't stress it, right? I think my main message is like, whatever orgasm you have, wherever you have it, it's great. If it's a small little mini orgasm, like a little wave, that's fine. If it's blowing out of the water, also great. If it's one and done, great. If it's multiple, great. And honestly, if it's elusive for you, that's okay too, right? I say the elusive orgasm. It's actually after a fabulous book by Vivian Cass. She's in our field. And it's just a great book to help women understand when that orgasm doesn't happen. A book that predated the elusive orgasm is called Becoming Orgasmic. And that's also a great book. And it's just these are great like self-help books to help people explore the blocks that block them from having an orgasm. But my MO was always permission to just like be where you are right now and be on that journey and explore. And if you want to explore having multiples, practice and play with it. And if you want to explore trying to squirt, I mean, you can play with it, but I think it really matters like the position of your urethra and your Skene's glands and what kind of happens there. And not all women pull it off, and that's okay.
How would you I mean, I guess it would be a different feeling, but would you even know if you did? I guess you would, right?
Some
It
women
would
take
be a
big
mess.
fountain, and others it's like a little dribble. And then the people who little dribble, you just have to sort of notice that it sort of has that urine smell and texture versus just the wetness of the vagina in terms of being self lubricated. So
Hmm,
sometimes sometimes that's elusive. Um,
interesting.
and then there's orgasm with periods, right? Like a lot of women love to have sex on their period because they're naturally lubricated with blood inside already. And there's all this taboo around it. When I say get a red towel or a maroon colored towel, all my towels are maroon because I like the color red, and throw it on the bed or throw it on the floor, wherever you have
Yeah,
sex, and have a great time or have sex in the shower.
I
And
do it all the time. I have awful cramps, and every month I'm like, all right, babe, let's go. I need my medicine.
Oh, really? So having an orgasm on your period actually helps your cramps too?
Yeah, it does. For me, it does. And I've read a lot of studies,
sure.
and a lot of my friends have told me that it's also helped them.
I
It's a
had
natural pain reducer, orgasm, right? So if you have
Interesting.
pain, it's like dopamine for the pain, right? So yeah, it can take away pain.
Well, that's good to know. I have heard that some women like to have sex when they're on their period because it really helped. And I remember my husband saying that too. It's like, well, some women say it's really great. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not some women, and it doesn't work for me that way.
No, that's fine, Kim. I mean, I'm Jewish, right? And I don't necessarily subscribe to all the rules that are more orthodox in nature, because I'm not Orthodox Jew, but I'm aware of the mikvah and this 2-week period that some more religious Jews abide by, and certainly traditionally, where they don't touch for those 2 weeks, and the woman has a period, she goes to this ritual bath called a mikvah, and she um, takes this ritual bath, and her and the husband do not touch even, let alone cuddle, let alone kiss, let alone any. So what happens, it's like a forced abstinence during this period, and then you come back together and usually there's a lot more desire there because there's the forced the forced separation of it. So it's an interesting way to kind of keep desire alive. Not that may be the
Interesting.
intention. So not having sex on your period is also okay. It's up to you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been a fun conversation. I want to just take some time to, thank anybody that's been listening, and um, really thank you, Dr. Jenny, for being so open and really providing such amazing answers and thought into this whole sexual journey that we went on. And um and and thank you for really benefiting me and changing my life in terms of my relationship with my husband and this newfound confidence that I found in myself. I've always been a confident woman, I think that's why a lot of people were surprised when they heard this conversation that I was a little less confident in my sexuality, and they're like really shocked about that. But I'm sure that might come with the territory of a lot of confident women. We're really good at hiding those flaws that we feel are flaws, which are not. And I think learning that and understanding that my sexuality is my sexuality and owning that and feeling confident in owning that, whatever it may be, was a huge, huge deal for me. And so I want to personally thank you for helping me get there. I'm almost getting a little emotional about it because it really did change my life. It changed the way I thought about things. It changed my relationship with my husband, who, by the way, before we even started this podcast, we were having issues. And it got to the point where, we both thought about going to a sex therapist or some kind of counseling because we were not sure how to navigate through this. And this podcast really fell in my lap. It wasn't something that I had planned on doing. I was going to be producing it like I produce a lot of other things, but I believe it was divine intervention, you know, and so thank you from the bottom of my heart. Really, I'm really, really happy about how this all turned out
My pleasure, Kim. I love
because I
hearing.
wasn't sure.
I mean, that's why I do what I do, even if it's just one couple, right? It matters to that one, right? And if it can matter
Yeah.
to more people, great. But help and healing is the name of the game. So I'm really happy to hear that.
It's been amazing. And Savannah, thank you too, because you've added something that I couldn't. And I think it was really important to get your voice and your experience. And you really brought a lot to our episodes. And I thank you for that. And I enjoyed, hearing about your experiences. And I know a lot of people who are listening also enjoyed it too. So thank you so much for being a part of it. And really appreciate you joining us when you have. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Also, Kim, I have a secret for you.
Oh,
Even strippers are insecure about our sexuality and our bodies, and it is our money. It's like our job for men to worship us with money. So every person has their insecurities.
yeah. And I mean, and that is something that I've learned, and, I think it was that very first episode that really that light bulb came on and just went, wow, there are so many narratives and understanding that part of it was huge,
Yeah.
huge. And so, it's just been very not only educational and informative, but completely eye-opening in a number of different ways. We've had so many great conversations, and I encourage anybody who is listening to subscribe to our podcast and make sure that you follow us because I don't think we're done yet. I
I
don't
hope
think we're
not.
done yet. I think we'll be heading into a season 2 after probably in early spring, maybe around March or April. We'll see how it goes. But I think I think we'll definitely be back with a season 2. So I'm excited about that. So if you subscribe, you'll get notified on anything that we put out there. And so that's always the best way to do it. And you can also go to our website as well, which is modernpleasurepodcast.com. Well, thanks again. This has been so fun. Have a great holiday season because I probably won't talk to you until after the holidays. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Jenny and Savannah. Thank you for listening, and we will definitely be back and see you soon. Please help us grow this channel by subscribing and liking this video. I also encourage you to tap on that bell icon to receive notifications so that you won't have to miss any of our videos.
And also let us know what you think of this episode down in the comments below. What sex questions do you have, and what would you want us to discuss in our next episode?
Thanks for watching today's episode. And if you want to watch more videos, just tap or click on this video.